Howdy, and welcome to the F1 Hatchet, and welcome to my Sao Paulo or Brazil GP post-race reaction. What was your thoughts on this race? Did you think it had enough action? I sure hope you did, because it had tons of action. A little craziness at the very beginning, and pretty much action throughout the whole race. I mean, it kind of died down a little bit here and there in the middle section, but in general, it had lots of action all the way through it. So I hope you enjoyed that. I mean, it was, as I said, the crazy first laps that help or hinder your enjoyment of this race. And kind of hurt me a little bit in the sense that we had that issue with Borletto, and then that kind of caused that first safety car to come out when it kind of bunched up the field again, when there was kind of weirdness going on, not really lots of action in that pack, so it kind of changed that aspect of it for me. But the rest of it was really good. I mean, the restart was decent, and it was kind of tense there to see who was going to end up on top, and then we had some more action there because of that restart and people colliding in each other, and that was more along those lines. But then we got into more of the real action with Max coming through the field from the pit lane all the way through. You know, it's astounding to me, but it's really cool to see, you know, somebody to be able to do that, put pressure on, you know, the leaders even from the pit lane. So that was really cool to see, and I thought that would probably added on quite a bit for a lot of people as well. Now, the other controversy in this race, of course, was Oscar's penalty. And was it too much? I don't think it was necessarily too much, but it probably was just kind of not deservingly given. I think it was more of a racing incident in that fashion. There was those three cars kind of going in, kind of going for that position. He was trying to back out of it to try to prevent the collision, even though he was probably in the right if he could have continued on due to the strict rules set. So I think that regard was kind of a little pushing it, and they probably shouldn't have given the penalty or had it more divided evenly across the two people kind of involved in that with Kimi and Oscar, instead of just laying it all on Oscar. But that was kind of my opinion. What was your opinion on that? Do you think that Lando was going to have enough of this momentum, this energy, this ability to take it on to get the F1 championship? Or do you think that's going to falter in the next couple of races to see how things are going to play out? You know, with the Racing Bulls, you know, coming up through the field, making it interesting as well on those other teams around them, and they're coming in getting pretty good points. And of course, Behrman having that nice haul of points, you know, boosting Haas up there to compete with Aston Martin for the constructors' standings as well, you know, potentially bumping Aston Martin down a spot. So all of that together, I think it made this a really cool race, and I really enjoyed it. It's probably one of the better races this season, but it's hard to look back in all of those races across the season, as it's been so many this season. So it makes it really hard to compare the ones at the very beginning of the season as well. So, but at least more recently, this is definitely one of the better, you know, races that we've seen in my view. But again, what was your view on this race? And just like normal, I work my way from the back of the pack to the front of the pack, going through each driver, telling you what happened to them, you know, how well they drove in my viewpoint, if I've seen enough of their driving in this race, and some other details on how they progressed in this race as well. So to start us off, we start with Gabriel Borletto, who started off in 18th and ended up in 20th with a DNF. He spun and hit the wall in turn 10 on lap 1. I think he was pushing a little too hard. I think he got in there on the inside trying to make a pass and was just shut down and kind of got out in the grass and just spun and hit the wall, you know, messing up his car, ending his day quite off the bat. I think it was his home race, and so he was trying to put on a good show when he should have just, you know, played it like more of a normal race. I think that's general the view, and that caused, of course, our first safety car to come out almost immediately, and that, you know, pushed things a little bit differently on that run. Now we have Charles Leclerc, who started off in 3rd and ended up in 19th with a DNF as well. He kind of got hit by Kimi as knocked off his front wheel and broke his suspension, and that happened on lap 6, turn 1 during that restart. And that was kind of caused by the three cars trying to go around the track, you know, in that corner at the same time, and then kind of Kimi getting squeezed out, hitting, getting hit or hit Oscar, depending on how you look at it. And that kind of bumped him over as he was trying to avoid that into, Charles Leclerc, who was just minding his own business. He may have had a little bit of extra space over there, but it was really hard to tell how you were going to react because of the three cars going in. And of course, you're not going to know that all three cars were trying to go into that corner at the same time. So I think Gabriel was kind of a mistake on his own. I think Charles was kind of minding his own business. So unfortunately, he just got caught up in the mess. So he was doing fairly good into the end, getting that qualifying third position and doing a decent job in those, the race to that point. Now, Lewis Hamilton started off in 13th and ended up in 18th. Again, with the DNF, so that was a double DNF for Ferrari, so that hurt Ferrari quite a bit during this. Lewis Hamilton lost 4 spots at the very first lap. He had contact with Sainz on the first lap, and then he had contact with Franco on the restart on lap 6, turn 1, lost his front wing, and that gave him a 5-second penalty, causing a collision, and that ended up having lots of issues, so that wing getting caught underneath the floor, and the floor was getting damaged, and so he was complaining on the radio about how bad that damage was and how he didn't have any rear stability at that point. And they eventually decided to retire that car on lap 38. Yuki Tsunoda started off in 17th and ended up in 17th. He gained 3 spots at the first lap, so he did a good start there. He had to end up having to do a 3-stop race because of tire damage at the very beginning, I believe, when he stopped on lap 2, switching from a set of hards to a set of mediums. And then he took those mediums to lap 24, was switching for another set of mediums, and then switched it, went to lap 47 and switched to yet another set of mediums. He did pass Ocon for 17th on lap 6, passed Franco for 13th on lap 9. He did get a 10-second penalty for causing a collision with Stroll on lap 6 in that issues by hitting the back of Stroll. And then he got another 10-second penalty for this team not completing the penalty for that collision successfully. So I guess somebody touched the car or did something to that, and so it was not completed on that first pit stop. So he had to go in again and serve another 10-second penalty, which kind of ruined Yuki's day overall. Then we have Lance Stroll, who started off in 14th and ended up in 16th. He did lose 1 spot at the very first lap, so not the greatest start for him. Did a 2-stop strategy, stopping on lap 29, switching from a set of hards to a set of mediums, taking that set of mediums to lap 54 before switching to a second set of mediums. Got hit by a Yuki on lap 6 and spun around and lost several positions, went down from 14th to 18th. And then was trying to work his way back up, passing Yuki for 17th on lap 31, passed Alonso for 9th on lap 41, and passed Franco for 12th on lap 52. Franco Colapinto started off in 16th and ended up in 15th. He had a 2-stop strategy as well, stopping on lap 29, switching from a set of mediums to a set of softs, taking that softs to lap 43 before switching to a second set of mediums. Now, that second pit stop, I had a record of 5.4 seconds on that second pit stop, so not a great pit stop for that second one either. So that kind of put him a little bit farther down in that pack. I do have him passing Hamilton for 14th on lap 11. Otherwise, he kind of stayed in the back of the pack, kind of on his own in that. So he didn't do the greatest job, but still was, keeping it decent to show what he can do. Gaining 1 spot overall, but with all of the DNFs, didn't really help him in that regard either. As he should have been a little higher up, in my viewpoint. Fernando Alonso started off in 11th and ended up in 14th. He did gain 1 spot at the very first lap, did a 2-stop strategy, stopping on lap 28, switching from a set of hards to a set of mediums, and that was a decent pit stop at 3.2 seconds. And he took that set of mediums to lap 46, where he switched it for a second set of mediums, and that was a little bit better with a 2.7 second pit stop. Otherwise, he was kind of on his own, not doing that great. I should have been a little bit better, I think, for Fernando Alonso in his sprint race, and should have been tweaked that a little bit more to that GP race so he could get a little bit farther up. He did pretty good on that qualifying session, getting up there close to that 10th marker, but then he just kind of fell back from there. So not the greatest run on this weekend for Fernando Alonso. Carlos Sainz started off in 15th and ended up in 13th. He had a 2-stop strategy as well, stopping on 17, switching from a set of softs to a set of mediums, and that was kind of a long pit stop with a 5.2 second pit stop. He took that medium set to lap 38, where he switched to a second set of mediums, which is a 2.5 second pit stop. He also gained 2 positions on the very first lap, so a pretty good start for him. He passed Hulkenberg for 12th on lap 2, passed Alonso for 10th on lap 9, passed Ocon for 16th on lap 23, passed Yuki for 16th on lap 42. So he had quite a bit of decent action in there, trying to work his way back up, but I wasn't quite able to get to where he wanted. I know he's having a really poor weekend overall, not getting the feel for that Williams car this weekend, so hopefully he can bounce back, over in Vegas to get a better feel. I know he tends to like Vegas a little bit better, so hopefully he can, get that Williams to work for him in there that weekend better than he can this weekend. Esteban Ocon started off in 20th and ended up in 12th. He started from the pit lane, gained 1 spot at the very first lap, and had a 2-stop strategy, stopping on lap 8, switching from a set of hards to a set of mediums, taking that set of mediums a long way to lap 47 before switching to a second set of mediums. And that second pit stop was a 2.9 second pit stop, so not the greatest pit stop, but it's not a bad pit stop either. He did pass Hamilton for 18th on lap 2 and passed Sainz for 11th on lap 67. Otherwise, it really wasn't quite his day, not quite getting up to the points where he wanted to be, but still a decent job for him, coming all the way back from that 20th position up to that 12th position. So a decent run for Ocon, even though he had to change some stuff. So if he could have started off a little bit better, he may have ended up into the points. It would have helped Haas out a little bit more. Alexander Albon started off in 12th and ended up in 11th. He gained 1 spot at the very first lap, so a pretty good start for him. Had a 2-stop strategy, stopping on lap 35, switching from a set of mediums to a set of softs with a pretty good pit stop of 2.4 seconds. And he took that set of softs all the way to lap 55 before switching to a set of mediums. He did pass Gasly for 8th on lap 9, passed Franco for 13th on lap 38, passed Alonso for 10th on lap 42, passed Franco for 14th on lap 59, passed Alonso again for 13th on lap 60, passed Sainz for 12th on lap 68, passed Ocon for 11th on lap 70, and had the fastest lap on lap 59. So he did a really good job there, not quite making it up to the points, gaining 1 position overall in the race, was still decent, had a lot of action on track, just wasn't quite there to edge out those last few positions to get to that point marker. So just outside of points, but it's still a decent run, I think, for Alex, especially when they were in that, early on in the weekend, they weren't quite up to par. So I think they learned a little bit. They just need to figure out how to get more out of that weekend. And again, hopefully in Vegas, they can kind of get that working a little bit better for that Williams to go forward and get some more points for that Williams team. Pierre Gasly hit the top 10 for another excellent job from him in that Alpine, getting up into the points. Started off in 9th and ended up in 10th. Gained 1 spot at the very first lap. Had a 2-stop strategy, stopping kind of early on lap 18, switching from a set of softs to a set of mediums with a 2.8 second pit stop. Taking that set of mediums to lap 39 before switching to a second set of mediums with another 2.8 second pit stop. So they need a little bit of work on their pit stops, but still not bad overall. He did pass Behrman for 7th, passed Albon for 8th on lap 9, passed Ocon for 14th on lap 22, passed Hijar for 12th on lap 27, passed Yuki for 15th on lap 42, and passed Stroll for 11th on lap 52. So he had a decent amount of action, kind of working his way in and out, trying to keep himself into the points, and just ended up getting into that last position and be able to get that last point again. Really good to see for Pierre Gasly and that Alpine, as the Alpine has pretty much dropped off the face of the earth those last few races. So him to getting up there and kind of getting back up into that rhythm in that midfield is really good to see. Nico Hulkenberg started off in 10th and ended up in the 9th. He did lose 2 spots at the very first lap, so not a great start from him. Did a 1-stop, and one of the few people that did a 1-stop race, stopping on lap 37, switching from a set of mediums to a set of softs. So he had 2 pretty big stints, one on that set of mediums and one on that set of softs. He did pass Alonso for 7th on lap 21, passed Albon for 6th on lap 34, and passed Ocon for 7th on lap 47. Isaac Hydjar started off in 5th and ended up in 8th. He had a two-stop strategy, stopping on lap 18, switching from a set of softs to a set of mediums with a nice 2.4 second pit stop, taking that set of mediums to lap 37 before switching to another set of mediums with another 2.4 second pit stop. He also passed Ocon for 13th on lap 22, passed Gasly for 12th on lap 27, passed Yuki for 15th on lap 40, passed Stroll for 10th on lap 52, passed Hulkenberg for 8th on lap 70, and passed Lawson for 7th on lap 71. Unfortunately, he did get passed again and lose that 7th position and dropped himself back into that 8th. But still a really good run, I think, for Isaac Hydjar, especially earlier in the weekend and the last couple of races. He wasn't quite looking up to par, and so getting his act together, getting back that confidence is really good to see. I know he was frustrated on several instances, and you can hear him on the radio, but he was really doing a good job in this run, I think. Getting back up into the points, getting some more confidence and getting pushed out. So hopefully his last 3 races will go his way, and he can kind of play out how well he does in that Racing Bulls and maybe prove that he can be in that Red Bull. Whether that is a good thing or a bad thing is yet to be seen. Liam Lawson started off in 7th and ended up in 7th. He gained 1 spot at the very first lap, so pretty good start for him. Did a one-stop strategy, stopping on lap 19, switching from a set of softs to a set of mediums with a nice 2.0 second pit stop. Passed Ocon for 15th on lap 22 and passed Hydjar for 7th on lap 71. So he kind of made that long stint on those medium tires and was trying to hold off, and you could tell that big train kind of coming around behind him, mainly holding up a lot of people. So did a good job of defending and maintaining that position through the end. So I think a really good job for him, even though it was a one stop where he had to play a lot more defensive than the offensive that he normally likes to be seen in. I think he likes to be more aggressive than defensive, but I think this is a good job in this run, in this race, to maintain that 7th position. Then we get to Oliver Bearman, who started off in 8th and ended up in 6th. He did lose 1 spot at the very first lap, did a 2-stop strategy, stopping on lap 17, switching from a set of softs to a set of mediums with a 3.0 second pit stop, so a little bit slow. Took that set of mediums to lap 42, where he switched it for another set of mediums, and that was a little bit longer with a 3.9 second pit stop. So they needed a little work on their pit stops for Oliver Bearman, but he was able to pass Gasly for 8th on lap 2, passed Gasly again on lap 7th on lap 9, passed Lawson for 6th on lap 13, passed Ocon for 15th on lap 19, passed Stroll for 10th on lap 26, passed Franco for 9th on lap 27, passed Alonso for 11th on lap 45, passed Hulkenberg for 7th on lap 49, and passed Lawson for 6th on lap 57. So he had a good amount of action in there, really pushing forward, really doing a good job getting up there in the points, maintaining one of the better runs for Oliver Bearman. As I said before, bumping up Haas, getting them to more compete the Aston Martins on the constructor standings, so that's really good to see. Bumping him up as well in the driver's standings. So a really good run from him in this run, even though he had a lot of action, kind of showed it on track to help him out as well. So not only did he play the right, game on the tires and the strategies, he did, show it on track as well on his passing ability. So I think it was a really good job for Oliver Bearman in this run. This gets us to our top 5, where we find Oscar Piastri, who started off in 4th and ended up in 5th. He had a 2-stop strategy, stopping on lap 38, switching from a set of mediums to a set of softs, where he had a 13.5 second pit stop, mainly because of that 10-second penalty that he received. So it was about a 3.5 overall pit stop. And then he went to lap 51 on that set of softs, so a pretty good stint there before switching to a set of mediums with a nice 2.2 second pit stop. So a pretty good pit stop on that second one. Not quite where he wanted to be on that first one, but it was kind of that 10-second penalty, so it kind of edged out there as well. He did kind of hit Kimi, or Kimi hit him, depending on how you viewed that, in that corner on turn 1 on lap 6, where he got, Kimi ended up getting pushed into Leclerc whether it was his doing or if it was because of Oscar. That's kind of a debatable situation, but unfortunately he got penalized for that. He got a 10-second penalty for causing a collision, and that was the big controversy for this weekend, as we didn't think, or most people didn't think, it was really his fault to be in that case to get the 10-second penalty. So it should be more of a racing incident in most people's view. What was your view on that incident? Did you think Oscar deserved that penalty? Did you think it should have been split across between Kimi and Oscar, or even potentially Leclerc as he was going around the outside in that turn? My viewpoint is, as I said earlier, it's probably more of a racing incident. I don't think I think Oscar was trying to play it more conservatively at the end, which kind of caused some of the issues, I think, for that penalty, because if he would have gone in there stronger, yes, he still would have collided, but it would have been, up there, according to the rules, had that corner, and it would have been on Kimi's fault. So in that regard, I think, they should have been more subjective in that call, but that's the way it played out, unfortunately, for Oscar. So he had to play that 10-second penalty, which kind of pushed him back in the field, which makes him have to fight a lot harder for the Drivers' Championship in these next 3 races. He did pass Lawson for 6th on lap 41, passed Behrman for 6th on lap 54, and passed Lawson for 5th on lap 55. So overall, I think Oscar did a really good job. It was just that restart issue that he had, and I really don't think it was necessarily his fault. I think it was more of a racing incident in that regard. It just kind of turned against him in that regard, unfortunately. So he'll have to figure out if he can bounce back in the next few races. And I know, Las Vegas is probably one of his more better races compared to Orlando. So we'll have to see how that plays out then. George Russell started off in 6th and ended up in 4th. He did lose 1 spot at the very first lap, so not the greatest start for George. He did a 2-stop strategy, stopping on lap 34, switching from a set of mediums to a set of softs. He did a nice pit stop with a 2.4-second pit stop, taking that set of softs all the way to lap 48 before switching to another set of mediums with a even slightly better pit stop with a 2.3-second pit stop. He did pass Lawson for 5th on lap 9, passed Hijar for 4th on lap 12. He passed Lawson for 5th on lap 51. So I think in general, George Russell did a good job. I know it sounded like he wasn't quite, had the feeling that he wanted in that Mercedes, but still doing a pretty good job maintaining that. Wasn't able to hold off Max Verstappen, but still maintain that 4th position. So getting pretty good points for Mercedes as well in that run. So I think he did a decent job in this running, even though it may not quite show it in that regard. Now we come to the star of the show with Max Verstappen, who started off in 19th, ended up in 3rd, had 1 spot gained at the very first lap, so decent start for him. Did a 3-stop strategy because of that puncture early on, so it made him pit stop early and then carried on from there. So he stopped on lap 7, switching from a set of hards to a set of mediums. Took that set of mediums to lap 34, switching to another set of mediums with a nice 2.3-second pit stop, and then carried that mediums to lap 54, where he switched to a set of softs with a 2.5-second pit stop. So a pretty good pit stop run for him with 3 pit stops, still able to get up there in the front. Really good to see. And of course, he started from the pit lane because he made all those changes during Parc Ferme, which really paid off for him. As you can see, was able to really get the feel for that car a lot better than he did in that qualifying session. He did pass Hamilton for 17th on lap 2, passed Franco for 15th on lap 6, passed Hamilton for 15th on lap 13, passed Franco for 14th on lap 14, passed Yuki for 13th on lap 15, passed Hülkenberg for 12th on lap 17, passed Alonso for 9th on lap 18, passed Albon for 5th on lap 21, passed Sainz for 11th on lap 36, passed Lawson for 9th on lap 37, passed Gasly for 6th on lap 38, and passed Russell for that 3rd spot on lap 63. He was voted driver of the day, which I cannot in any conscience vote for anybody else. Him coming from the pit lane all the way up to the podium position, being able to run that gauntlet no matter what track it is an excellent job for him. Had the great feeling for that car. Was able to just weave through those back markers as he made his way back up to the front to fight for those podium positions. And he was even fighting to be able to potentially get that second position. And of course, there were some questions whether he should have stayed out and not done that the third pit stop, and run his tires to see if he could maintain that lead. But of course, he was still pretty old on those, like 16 laps old on those tires, so that would have probably worn off because he was really pushing those tires pretty heavily during each of those stints that he was on. But an excellent job again from Max Verstappen, surge driver of the day. Phenomenal. You can't count Max out in any circumstances. When you first saw the qualifying, you're like, oh, he's out of the Drivers' Championship. But then, of course, what he does, he gets back on the podium, so puts himself back into that running, even though it's not quite where he wanted to be. Still got pretty good points and still has a possibility of, taking that out, depending on what happens to the McLaren drivers in the next couple of races as well. Then we get to Kimi Antonelli, who started off in second and ended up in second. He did a two-stop strategy on lap 21, stopping for that set of softs to a set of mediums with a 2.2 second pit stop, taking that set of mediums to lap 47 before switching to another set of mediums with another 2.2 second pit stop. He was kind of got hit Oscar, depending on, again, how you look at that, and got kind of pushed or kind of reacted into Leclerc, which knocked Leclerc off in turn 1 and lap 6. Luckily for him, it didn't really damage his car in any way, so he's able to continue on to where he ended up passing Stroll for 10th on lap 23, passed Franco for 9th on lap 24, passed Alonso for 7th on lap 26, passed Hulkenberg for 6th on lap 29, passed Albon for 5th on lap 30, and passed Lawson for 4th on lap 50. And this, of course, gets us to our race winner, Lando Norris, who started off in first and ended up in first. He did a two-stop strategy, stopping on lap 30, switching from a set of mediums to a set of softs with a nice 2.2 second pit stop, taking that set of softs to lap 50 before he switched to a set of mediums with another 2.2 second pit stop, so a good pit stop run for him. And then he passed Max for third on lap 33 due to one of those pit stop strategies. So to kind of give you a rundown of how this race went, we had that safety car that came out on lap 2 and went to lap 5. And then we basically was given the go-ahead and green light, where we had a 0.344 second lead for Lando over Kimi at that point in time. And then, of course, we had the virtual safety car come out in lap 7 and went to lap 8. And so by lap 10, it was a 1.43 second lead for Lando over Oscar. Lap 15, it was a 2.72 second lead for Lando over Oscar. By lap 25, it was a 5.68 second lead for Lando over Oscar. Then Lando decided to pit. And so by lap 35, it was a 11.15 second lead for Oscar over Lando. By lap 50, it was a 3.57 second lead for Max over Oscar. And by lap 60, it was a 6.46 second lead back to Lando over Kimi. By lap 65, it was an 8.11 second lead for Lando over Kimi. And by lap 71 at the very end, it was up to a 10.39 second lead for Lando over Kimi Antonelli. So you can see that, even though it's kind of had that little mix in there between the pit stops, for Lando and Oscar and Max, and that running and Kimi in there as well, trying to get those pit stops, kind of threw some things around a little bit, but you can really kind of see that overall edge that Lando had on this race and was able to pull out, those leads and those gaps. So that kind of went all his way. And even though he was, thinking he was having to push a lot more and would like the bigger lead overall to finalize this. But a really good run from Lando Norris in this, maintaining, of course, the qualifying session, getting on the pole position, doing the start, the restart, and the safety car start, all doing really good, keeping the lead, maybe not quite to his liking, getting those gaps start off the bat, but was still able to maintain that lead and, pull out those gaps as he went along. So again, that's kind of the rundown and a really good job from Lando. So I pulled a couple of these graphs just to kind of give you some ideas of how things went. This is right after Lando pitted around, lap 31, in that regard. You can see that here that Piastri's in the lead and over Russell by 8.06 seconds in that running. And then, of course, Max was pretty far back, but still gaining ground and just getting ahead of Lando when he pitted in that run. But you can kind of see those gaps, pretty good, decent gaps between each of those drivers as they're going through in this time period. Now, if you move forward a little bit over here to that second pit stop for Lando Norris, you can see him dropping, had a really good lead, and then dropping back behind his teammate. And then, this is when Max took the lead as he went through, and then, of course, Oscar pitted as well. And that kind of ran for a little while with Oscar being in second in the Mercedes. A little bit gaps and having to work through the field for his teammate, where he was able to kind of get a little bit cleaner, run and push forward. And of course, by the end, we have a nice giant gap between him and Antonelli, but with Antonelli and Max, there was a nice thin margin. And then, of course, you have Russell and Piastri with another thin margin. So we had some battles for second and a battle for fourth in regard to that. So that was kind of cool to see at the very end who was going to actually pull out if they had a chance to do that or not. So what did this do to our driver standings? Of course, we still have Lando in the lead with 390 points, gained some ground over his teammate Oscar, now with 366. Max Verstappen gaining some ground again with 341, so he's putting some pressure on those McLaren drivers for that drivers' championship. Russell's a little bit farther behind with 276, Charles Leclerc with 214, and Lewis Hamilton with 148, and Kimi Antonelli gaining ground with 122. The big changes here, we see Isaac Hydjar bumping up over to that 10th position, now with 43, tied with Hulkenberg, and Oliver Behrman going up to 11th with 40, tied with Fernando Alonso, but bumping him down to that 12th. Carlos down to 13th, where Liam Lawson jumped over Stroll for that 14th, now with 36 points. So that kind of gives you the lay of the land there. And for the constructor standings, of course, we already know that McLaren has won it in Singapore, but they have 756 points now. Mercedes is getting that second position now with 398 points. Red Bull's actually hopped over Ferrari because they're double DNF for Ferrari. So Red Bull's in that third position with 366, and Ferrari's with that 362 points. So we'll have to see those races for the next three races, see kind of how it plays out for those second, third, and fourth positions there to see kind of how that can end up. But the other thing to watch out for is, of course, with the Racing Bulls in that sixth position with 82, with Aston Martin with 72, so that still could be switched over. But of course, Haas jumping up with to 70 points, so only 2 points behind Aston Martin. So that could be a big change there for that sixth position, seventh position marker. And these are the next three races. So what's coming up next? We have Las Vegas on November 22nd, or the Dead Pig, as a lot of people call it because of the way that track looks. Has a length of 3.853 miles, 50 laps being run on a GP race for a total race distance of 192.599 miles. It was first introduced in 2023, and the lap record holder is currently Lando Norris in 2024 with 1 minute 34.876 seconds. So until then, I will see you on the grid, and farewell.